Special guest, he's been here before. We're happy to have him again. He's the ESPN NFL Nation Bills reporter, makes regular appearances on NFL Live, SportsCenter, and ESPN Radio. Former Panthers reporter for the Charlotte Observer. Happy to have Marcel Louis-Jacques with us. Marcel, thanks for coming in here.
Thanks for having me. That's a heck of an intro, man. I really enjoyed that.
Well, you got a long resume.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. I was just talking about it with somebody, finally reaching a point where there's some jobs now I can leave off the resume. Don't need to fill space anymore.
There might be jobs you want to leave off. I have some of those in my history.
No doubt.
I'm not going to tell anybody I work there.
Well, give us your first overall impressions after the game on Sunday. Obviously, up and down offensively, mostly up defensively.
I mean, that was just a furious end to the game, but despite a pretty mundane, from the Bills' point of view, a pretty mundane first 3 quarters, and just this furious rally to finish it out. I think some fans are probably still catching their breath, but I think beyond the obvious, a big takeaway here is this defense is not only exactly what we thought they'd be, they might even be a little bit better. I think Ed Oliver had an impressive debut here, and he's doing exactly what he was drafted to do, which is provide that interior disruption and force or clear up some pass rush lanes for guys like Jerry Hughes, Shaq Lawson, Trent Murphy, all 3 of whom we saw make plays that on Sunday. And so it was a pretty popular sentiment in the locker room after, but how often are you seeing 4 turnovers in a half and only being down 6-0? Right. It's because this defense is elite.
Let's talk about those 4 turnovers. We talked about them before you came on the show in the control room the other day. And I want to play first a soundbite from Brian Dable. You were there yesterday, right, when Coach Dable talked to the media and talked about the 4 turnovers. And it was clear to me he wasn't looking to make excuses for 4 turnovers, but there are circumstances. Here's what Brian Dable said yesterday about those 4 turnovers.
There's always a reason for a turnover, whether it's a ball location, finishing a catch, an arm angle. We're not about making excuses. Look, there's going to be some that you just take bad bounces. That's football. But you can always look to improve. We got to get the quarterback-center exchange taken care of. We got to keep 2 hands on the ball in the pocket. We got to make a play when it comes our way, even if it's a little bit low. So, look, we can do a better job of that. We need to do a better job of that. That's where it starts. And again, some are bounces that you're going to have to overcome.
Brian Dable on the turnover. Steve, tell Marcel your conversation with great.
Years ago, I was doing a production meeting with Peyton Manning as an analyst for CBS Sports. We were doing the game in the booth, and I talked to him, and we were talking about the game he had last week, and he had an interception. And he said, listen, he goes, ask him about the specifics of it. He says, every interception has a story, but nobody wants to hear it, right? And that's kind of the way it is with these turnovers that we suffered through the Jets last year. They were different. One was a defensive pass tipped, offensive pass tipped, a loose ball in the pocket, sack strip fumble, and then a fumbled exchange. I mean, they're all 4 different things, even though 2 of them were categorized as interceptions. What do you take from that?
Yeah, it's funny because that's I think every writer's mentions exploded with not Josh's fault takes. Right. But ultimately, the football gods just gave him a little bit of positive karma there, because for every not his fault interception, a should-be interception was taken away. You saw the one he threw that was negated with the defensive holding. Another one off balance, all arm, dropped by Jet safety on the 1 or 2 yard line. Mm-hmm. He was not without his share of dangerous throws, and not cool dangerous, game-breaking dangerous. Right. But the thing is, even despite those turnovers, for him to go to the sideline repeatedly and just say, I got this, and it not just be all conjecture or just not just be some grammar, for these guys to buy in to it when he goes and looks him in the eye and says, I got it. I think that's an important step, and that really advances the narrative that we've heard all offseason, that this is Josh Allen's team right now, and he can command this huddle, he can command this offense and this team as a whole.
I think it's pretty cool, too. And Micah Hyde in the post-game locker room Sunday said something along the lines of, we're built for this. We know how to handle this. And I thought, who can argue with that, right?
Well, not only did he say it, he backed it up at the end of the game with 2 80-yard-plus drives. I mean, that you can say it, but to come out and do it, that next time he says it, they have more reason to believe it.
Yeah, and obviously the next step here is not being in that situation to begin with, but I want to look at the little things that he did that turned into greater positives. in 2018, he was statistically one of the worst quarterbacks in the league when he was forced outside of the pocket and against the blitz. The Jets brought pressure plenty of times on Sunday, and Allen performed admirably. I believe it was something like 8 of 13, completed 8 of 13 against the blitz, 8 of 12 when at least one Jets lineman, won his pass rush. He did have his touchdown to John Brown came with pressure in his face. His interception on the tip at the line of scrimmage, that was against the blitz as well, but if we're not counting that, then it looks like a pretty good day. And so that's just the greater, up and to the right development that I think everybody's looking for when it comes to Josh Allen, and the willingness to throw the ball away instead of scrambling, or throw the ball away instead of forcing it into some tight window and trusting his arm too much. You saw him do it a couple times. You saw him do it on the opening drive. You saw him take his check down to Devin Singletary on that, the game-deciding drive. And then the next play, he throws the game winner to John Brown. So it was really a reflection of how the small, smart play can turn into greater positives, and that's important for any young person, not just young player, to see that kind of gratification.
Our guest is Marcel Louis-Jacques, covers the Bills for ESPN NFL Nation Bills reporter. Let me get your thoughts on our Twitter poll today, and it's more of a general overview of the Buffalo offense. And look, we admit we only have one game. You don't want to draw major conclusions, but we do want to draw major conclusions. What do you think about the Buffalo offense and the way they played this game? On Twitter, we're asking our listeners, 60% pass on Sunday. They were 52% pass a year ago. That plus the big plays, is this an indicator of a new Bills offense? Today on Twitter, with a ton of responses, 1,100 responses, 64% of our listeners say no, that was game plan specific. 27% say yes, more passing. And by the way, where's that been? They've needed that for years. 9% say no, we need more of the run game. What do you think? Did we see a new Buffalo offense on Sunday, Marcel?
Well, Brian Daboll has been pretty insistent that the game plan will be matchup specific. But if you look at Buffalo's offense right now as a whole, they are not dynamic enough in either setting. They're not dynamic enough passing team to say that is what we're going to do and lock in on it. They're not dynamic enough running team to say we're going to force this issue. So I really think they're going to take what the defense gives them, because that's not necessarily the strength of this team. This team is built around the defense's ability to keep opponents out of the end zone, which we saw on Sunday, which we'll probably continue to see over these next 3 weeks with the New York Giants, with the Cincinnati Bengals. All this offense needs to do is whatever it takes to score points, whether it's on the ground, whether it's through the air. And as basic coach speaky as that sounds, I mean, it really does make sense when you look at just the makeup of the team.
Well, one of the things I noticed about this question, is this an indicator of the new Bills offense? It is completely new. 9 new starters from a year ago. They're able to do a lot more things. They have a lot more tools in the toolbox, as it were. They can run the football with this offensive line. They can drop back and throw it without having the guy pull it down and run. So it's a much different offense, no question about it, by design, and plus just by the fact they got way better players at 9 spots in the starting lineup.
They do, and that wasn't meant to be any sort of disrespect to this offensive unit. They do have playmakers. I think John Brown is as exciting as ever. Devin Singletary, my Lord, this kid needs more touches, I think, regardless if it's handoff or just the swing and out routes that he was doing. But there are playmakers, but you're not looking at them like the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
No matter what stadium they go into, they're going to throw the ball, and they're going to do it well. Mm-hmm. The Dallas Cowboys, no matter where they're going, they're handing that rock off to Ezekiel Elliott. So, but the Bills don't have that now.
I got to say, I'm just encouraged by the fact that they have the capability to have a viable passing game. They did not have that last year. Just to have the ability to do that is an upgrade. It's an improvement.
That's true, and that's what adding guys like Cole Beasley and John Brown will get you. Beasley, I mean, he was open basically at will.
Yeah.
We saw against a pretty depleted Jets secondary, and I think that does tie into Brian Daboll's decision to call so many passing plays in those first 3 quarters, because this Jets secondary is not good right now outside of Jamal Adams and to an extent Tremaine Johnson. But I do think it's a positive sign going forward that they can kind of tell a defense to pick your poison and be proficient enough to move the ball.
Well, they also had the ability defensively. I mean, Jamison Crowder had 14 catches. He didn't have 100 yards. That's a defensive effort right there. I mean, that's forcing them to take not much of what they're giving you. I don't think that's sustainable, but by the same token, I mean, it says something about where this team is. They're going to hang their hat on this defense, and whatever the ups and downs the offense may have, and there's going to be some more. This defense doesn't seem to be having any downs.
No, I mean, you look at that on every level, and you'd really have to nitpick. I wouldn't want to be asked to find a weak point in that defense. That secondary, that back four is about as good as you're going to find in the NFL. Even Levi Wallace, who kind of usurped the job last year and hung on to it throughout training camp. You're seeing him make plays as well. You saw he saved what could have been a massive play at the end of the game. Kind of awkward recovery, but a recovery. This is results-driven league. That linebacker core, Milano was everywhere. Tremaine Edmonds was everywhere. Lorenzo Alexander provided pressure. Star Lutelli and Ed Oliver, they're getting the job done in the middle. Those edge rushers are doing what they need to do. It's just really hard to find a spot on this defense to attack if you are an opposing offense. And like you said, the fact that Crowder's got 14 catches for, I think it was 95 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, you flinch a little bit when you see 14 catches.
Right.
But I think they'll take it.
Yeah.
What do you think of Ed Oliver's NFL debut?
I think he showed a lot of promise. He showed a lot of what we saw from him in training camp, what we saw in the preseason, which is a sneaky strength for his size. I know a lot of people, a lot of pundits refer to him as undersized, but he can toss you around. I think we're seeing it right here. That's a grown man. That's a 300-plus pound lineman that he just swing moved basically to the ground. That's it looked like a tackling dummy there, but and he's quick. That's what you would expect from a guy his size. So that kind of blend of power and agility is tough to contend. And when you think that this guy is still learning the game at this level, it's really, if you're a Bills fan, you've got to be thrilled with what his ceiling could possibly be in the coming years.
You know, we watched this team come into training camp and all the offseason trying to fix their offensive line. It looked pretty good against the Jets. It really did. The running game at the end of the game, they came through. They protected Josh Allen, although, there was some moments where the Jets got some pressure. That's a good front for the Jets, and the Bills' offensive line more than held their own.
That's correct. And I think Dable touched on it a little bit on why the run game was able to succeed toward the end of the game, because they're dialing up so many passes, and this defensive line is forced over and over and over again to rush the passer. They're a little more exhausted toward the end of the game when it gets down to just mano a mano, trying to move the ball. And but no, I think they looked right. I think Nsekhe, not even arguably, I think he looked better than Cody Ford at right tackle, and I think John Feliciano even looked better than Cody Ford at right guard. So I don't know if there's any rush to stick Ford in the starting lineup. I think he still deserves to be in that rotation, but right now I wouldn't be stunned if we saw Dawkins, Spain, Morris, Feliciano, and Nsekhe to start the game in MetLife on Sunday.
Just a minute or two left with Marcel Louis-Jacques, who covers the Bills for ESPN, NFL Nation ESPN reporter. From Le'Veon Bell to Saquon Barkley, I think this is a tougher test, to be quite honest. I really do. Barkley, for my money, is the best there is right now.
He is, but, I mean, let's not get it twisted here. Le'Veon Bell is still very much Le'Veon Bell. I think 32 teams would love a Le'Veon Bell, Le'Veon Bell talent. But
Barkley.
Barkley's going to be he's going to be a fantastic challenge for this defense. But the thing is, if it really might just be Barkley. You got to contend with, you got to find a way to contain Evan Ingram. Of course, the Jets didn't offer anybody remotely close to the skill set Ingram's going to bring. But beyond that, Golden Tate is still suspended. Sterling Shepard is in concussion protocol. He might not be available for week 2. Where else is that ball going? Eli Manning is not.
He's not going to run the quarterback option. Yeah,
I think he tried. I think he tried to juke Leighton Vander Esch, and that did not end well. But no, it'll be a great challenge. And then even beyond that, if Joe Mixon is back at week 3, that's a tough test against Cincinnati. You got Sony Michel. After that, you've got Derrick Henry. After that, I mean, there's a steady stream of talented running backs the Bills are going to face this year. But I think it's good to get these out the way now so that when you get Ezekiel Elliott, when you get James Conner, when you get Le'Veon Bell again, and Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram, later on in the season, they are battle tested in stopping the run.
I know you mentioned him just earlier in the segment. I want to get back to him. The Bills' own running back, their rookie running back, Devin Singletary. He was on the field for 70% of the snaps, but he only had 4 carries and a couple of catches. That's probably going to, after the success he had, it's probably going to change.
I would guess so. I just don't see, obviously Brian Dable is going to forget more football than I'll ever know. But I can't see a scenario in which a guy gets 98 yards on 9 touches in crunch time. This isn't garbage time. When you needed him the most, and then not be a focal point of the game plan the following week, especially against a Giants defense that was just lit up by Dallas this past week. So I would expect Devin Singletary to carry a little bigger workload this game. And the beautiful thing about him is you don't just have to hand him the ball. You can send him in motion. You can line him up in the slot. You can just give it to him on the swing route, tell him to run an out, roll Josh Allen out of the pocket like we saw on Sunday against the Jets. He's just such a versatile weapon. Frank Gore is still he's still a productive runner. And I think that there's just so much more promise in this year's Bills offense than last year's, which was essentially, Josh, for the love of God, please make something happen.
Right.
And
that was their game plan.
Yeah, I think if you're Josh Allen, you sleep a little easier. You're sleeping a little easier nowadays.
Marcel, preseason, did you have a win projection for the Buffalo Bills? And can you tell us what it was?
Well, I don't know about win projection, but as far as a window, there are 6 games right now where on paper, Buffalo should be the winner. Like, Buffalo should win. You got to beat the Jets at least once, got to beat the Giants, the Bengals, the
Dolphins
Redskins, the Dolphins twice. So there's 6 right there. Tennessee is still a swing game. Baltimore, I think Buffalo's actually favored according to ESPN's FPI. That's going to be a home game. Pittsburgh's all of a sudden not looking like a world beater. On the flip side, that kind of looking like the chances of splitting with New England are dwindling.
Yeah, dwindling.
Let's say dwindling.
The
That
belief
is
is dwindling anyway, yeah.
So what are you thinking, 9-10?
I think 9 wins is realistic. That was what our FPI had as their high point here. I think there's also a very realistic scenario where they win 10 games. Please don't tweet me with 12-4. That's like, relax a little bit. And
What about my man here, 11-plus wins? He won't even nail it down to one number, 11-plus.
if you're getting 11,
Pick one, 11 or 12.
Yeah, you're gonna even if you get swept by New England, that means you go 11-3 the rest of the way.
So if you get swept by New England and you want to win 11 games, that means that you've got to beat some combination of Pittsburgh, Dallas, Philadelphia, and Baltimore.
That's right.
And that's gonna be tricky.
Sure.
But they're
I
going to
mean,
play well, and they're going to have to. I'll tell you, defensively, they're going to be in a lot of games that people didn't give them a chance to win, and they're going to get some of those games because they were 6-10 aside. They were two. I keep saying there are 2 bounces of the ball away from being 8-8 last year. That changes the perception about this team. This is a team that I think is going to be in every single game they play this within a score late in every single ball game they play. And that gives them a chance to steal a couple.
I don't know how anybody picks games now in December. You
I
guys
know.
go ahead, knock yourself out.
Right?
I don't know what's going to look
Exactly.
like.
But then we're not. But what we're also assuming here, not to play devil's advocate here, for an 11-win season, we're also assuming that they win the games that they should win.
Yes.
Yeah,
And we see
exactly.
it all the time in the NFL. Teams don't always win
We're
games. That's why you
projecting the
play.
games they should win after week 1 of of these games, where 5 of the teams that got beat last year made the playoffs.
Yeah.
So okay, we're crazy.
Marcel, thanks for this. Thanks for coming in.
Always
Marcel.
a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Marcel Louis-Jacques is the ESPN NFL Nation Bills reporter. Happy to have him in studio with us. Steve and I coming back. We'll hear more from you when we return. Sunday, was that an indicator of what the Bills offense should or will look like this year? Let us know what you think. We're coming back. One Bills Live, presented by Kaleida Health on Buffalo Bills Radio.